I am originally from India. I always knew I wanted to be a writer ever since I was very young. So I took the obvious path. I studied English and I did my undergrad back in Delhi University. And then I moved here right after for my master's degree in English literature as well. Initially, my plan was, if I'm being completely honest, just to move here for study. I hadn't thought much of it. I was just taking it as it came. Um, However, I applied to a couple of universities as well. I did apply to Oxford and Cambridge as well. Edinburgh was probably my third choice, and that's where I ended up. And I'm glad I did because I really, really love the city. Um, I did my master's for a year, and this was between 2022 and 2023, and that was the year when there were a lot of teacher strikes going on. So unfortunately, there weren't too many lectures or the sort of experience that I had imagined. It wasn't exactly which it can never be. I do understand, but yeah. So so as soon as I graduated, that's when I actually started thinking about what next, and I realized. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't even know about the graduate visa. I had some time on my student visa, and people around me suddenly started talking about the graduate visa, and I was like, okay, yeah, this seems nice because I do want to stay here for a bit. So I ended up applying for the graduate visa myself. However, by the time I graduated, as probably within the first week of graduating, I realized, okay, I need a job now. I had been working part time. However, it just got so much more real. Moving out of student accommodation, bills to pay, so many things just got so much more real. And I think it was adulting express. So I started looking for writing jobs because I was very set on the fact that that is what I wanted to do. I did not want to settle for something that didn't align with what I wanted to do or something that was sort of secondary or tertiary to English. From day one thing that I was sure of was that come what may, however long it takes and however much it pays me, this is the path I want to take. And I think that worked in my favor because I sort of had blinkers on. That was the only thing, like all my energies were driven towards finding this one thing. And because all of my energies were channelized in one direction, I think it was only a matter of time before it worked out. So, so I started applying to jobs. I applied to, can't even remember, hundreds of jobs. I think the one thing that I took from the first time that I was applying to jobs, which now if I look back, if I'd done it sooner, would have made my life much easier, was, as cliche as it sounds, writing cover letters. Because when you're a fresh graduate and you practically have no experience on your CV, the cover letter is the only thing that will probably make you stand out. And it's your opportunity to show your voice, to show them that you're keen, if not experienced, and that you're worth it. And I think it's important to approach the process with that confidence because I realized the sort of the application results that I was getting as soon as I shifted my confidence was starkly different from when I was just sort of applying haphazardly, not knowing whether or not it will work out. So I applied for 2 months without much luck. However, just things when they have to work out, they just end up working out. And I was suddenly in a position. So I graduated in August, and then in end of October, I actually ended up with 2 job offers, and these were both for writing roles. So one of them was a graduate bid writer, which is not something that we have back in India. So it's something that was completely new to me, but I knew that it was something related to writing, and it was something I would be keen on learning. and the second one was for a graduate content writer, which is also something that I was excited about. So yeah, and that was sort of I ended up taking one of those jobs, and that was sort of how I got my foot into the door. And the job application process, because I have applied to jobs after that quite a bit, unfortunately, but the process became much easier once I had some experience in the UK on my CV.
Amazing. So it's for you, it was a long journey, but one that you doubled down on in terms of your passion, in terms of your single-mindedness to pursue this career path. And you think that's what made you successful because you had no sort of safety options, you had no secondary plan. It was just this or nothing. And that that kind of just like self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Absolutely. I really believe in this. I think I had some amount of delusional self-belief, and that worked out in my favor eventually. I mean, one way of looking at it is it didn't work out for a couple of months, but the fact that I didn't give up really worked in my favor to a point where it gave me things that I probably wouldn't even have imagined that I would be able to. When I just started applying, I think probably the first 2 weeks were such a rude awakening, applying to so many jobs and getting so many rejections. Because when you're just fresh out of university, the world is your oyster, and you're thinking, why wouldn't someone want me? And then you're like, oh, this is why. Yeah, I'm really glad things worked out the way that they did. And rather than sort of internalizing the fact that I was getting rejections, I just kept going. And sooner rather than later, that did have to pay off.
It's amazing. Do you think your mindset is something that you developed through this process, or do you already have a very strong sort of resolve before you started this thing, and that helped you kind of push through all the failures and all the challenges?
That's a great question, actually. I think a bit of both. However, I would definitely say that this process, the entire job application process from the beginning up until I actually got sponsored, has made me very resilient. And I would probably say at least 70% of what my mindset is today can be attributed to just going through this entire struggle and figuring it eventually.
I think you've done some amazing things, because I've been through this myself, but you've done not only managed to get a job, but you got a job that sponsors a visa in a very tough climate for a field, a sector that is traditionally not something that you would think, is where visa sponsorship and a job even is possible. So you've kind of conquered three different achievements there. So that's really impressive.
Thank you.
How do you think would you have changed anything if you were to go back and do things differently?
Through the entire process?
Yes.
Yes, for sure. Like I said, in the beginning, I definitely would have applied with more cover letters and more intentional cover letters, rather than sort of sticking with what the template is.
Yeah.
Well, that could also be quite specific to my field, because I'm a writer, but really do appreciate, reading one's unique voice. And this was slightly before AI was just growing. So it would have been much easier to just follow a template. But time and again, I've seen people and employers really do appreciate honesty and uniqueness. So I definitely would have applied with more cover letters and intentional cover letters. Apart from that, I think I spent some time in some of my jobs. And I know for a fact that I'm echoing the sentiment of a lot of international students. The problem is the job market is already crumbling. We know that. However, having to bring up the conversation about sponsorship somehow feels like a weakness to us immigrants. And we somehow think we would be less valuable or less sought after. I do think there might be some truth to that. I understand that. I understand that nervousness. That's something that I've definitely experienced. However, I've realized rather than being in a job that's actually never going to do it for you, it's just what it leads to is more anxiety, sort of being clouded in your head, essentially with things that are mostly out of your control. Because if it's a company that's even unwilling to have that conversation from the get go, there's a very, very small chance that they're ever going to. However, if it's a company that's willing to sort of, it might not be a company that's willing to do it from the get go, and I understand that.
Yeah.
However, if it's a conversation that they're willing to have, if they're willing to say, okay, we can do this probably past your probation period, okay, we can discuss this once you've been here for X amount of years, or the fact that, oh, we don't know about this, can you educate us more? I think their curiosity towards it also matters.
Yeah.
So what I would have probably done differently was been more confident and been more assertive in my needs as an immigrant to stay in this country, because I think we deserve just as much as anyone else does for the amount of effort that we put in, if not more. We shouldn't shy away from, or we shouldn't think of ourselves as less valuable just because those are our
Sure.
circumstances.
Yeah, that's really true. I think I've spoken to a lot of students, and I kind of experienced this myself as well. But the visa compensation is something that could be a pro or a con depending on how you spin it. And the fact that you have to be sponsored on a visa kind of gives the employer the assurance as well that you're not going to be hopping from job to job at the beginning, because there's a lot of barriers to doing that when you're on a visa. And the actual cost to them is not massively high if you think about it. Yeah,
No.
it's spread across like 2 or 3 years of your sponsorship. It's actually really minimal cost. And a lot of employers, as you rightly said, they need to be educated about all this sort of thing, because the big myth is that it costs £20,000 or something.
No,
right?
absolutely
Ridiculous figure
not.
like that. Yeah. So thanks for mentioning that. I think it's a really important point. You picked up. I want to pick up on something you said about obviously AI is a big thing now, and you mentioned that in your LinkedIn post as well.
Yeah.
How do you see that as either as something that can help with applications, or does that create a lot of noise for employers just because there's so much AI generated content and applications out there?
I do feel like there's a lot out there that's AI generated, which isn't well, which isn't worth much, simply because it's all the same thing again and again. And it's quite easy for people to pick up on that. Even when I posted on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who messaged me wanting to know my experience, and some of those were the same message. And I mean, if I'm thinking as an employer, I've never been in that position, but if I'm putting myself in those shoes, if I see two applications looking the exact same, the first thing I would think is, firstly, if you didn't care enough about this job to even sort of make yourself stand out, why would you care about the work in the job? Firstly. Secondly, if you need a machine to tell you or to tell me who you are, where does that place you? Do I think it can be assisted? Absolutely. And I'm saying this as someone who earns from writing. But I don't think it's something that can replace effort. I think there's a way of using AI. I think there's a way of prompting it. I think it's really good in something that I did in my recent applications was I sort of the roles that I was passionate about, I sort of put them into ChatGPT and asked Chat, based on what what would be sort of like an ideal candidate for this position, and what would they have done in the past? What are the achievable metrics that they would have achieved? and just sort of taking inspiration from that in a way, because sometimes when you've been working in a company for so long, and also when you've switched countries, you tend to forget every responsibility that you've held. So sort of getting that inspiration in terms of, because I remember reading just a prompt and I was like, I've actually done something very similar. I wouldn't have thought of phrasing it that way. So making your voice unique through that assistance, I think that definitely has its place. However, nothing can replace what you have actually achieved, what you have actually helped a company do. So yeah, I think just putting a job description into chat and sort of just ramming everything into your CV, I don't think it's going to work. Everyone is way smarter than that these days.
Yeah, I think it does create a negative impact as well because you're creating a lot of noise and that actually limits employers from actually seeing who you are and what your real value is. There is definitely an advantage in using AI to like brainstorm ideas, but ultimately the voice has to be your own, I think, especially for your
formatting. The sort of mindless things, that's something that AI can do. I understand that.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't think there's any replacing your own authentic experience in any way.
It's great to hear. I think I completely agree. That's what I want a lot of the students out there to hear as well. Because a lot of them are using AI, but they're using it as like to answer the questions for them and to give them like the perfect answer when actually you don't need to be perfect necessarily. You just need to be, you need to show your real value through the most unfiltered way possible, I think. And trust that you have that value to offer to companies.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah. How much networking do you do in this journey? Because that's something, we try and encourage our students to do. I think it's always useful to know people in the industry. It's useful to understand what's going on, what the trends, and be connected on a human level, I think, rather than just apply, to hundreds of jobs online.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, because when I just started applying to jobs, one of my sort of seniors told me to network. I did not know what that meant. Also because I've studied English and there isn't much networking in English at all. You just you write your own paper, you submit it, it's done. It's a very isolating process sometimes. However, from my experience, especially in the UK, I think networking is the long game, but a very rewarding one.
Yeah.
Just a small example. Even if your connection with someone on LinkedIn doesn't necessarily lead to a job, if it's someone from your industry and you're sort of caught up on their journey, their work, their life, they might just post something one day. So because I had sort of bid writers in my connection who didn't necessarily know me, but knew colleagues that I'd worked with, or sort of were talking about things that I was interested in. When I actually started looking for jobs, it was so much easier to see, because sometimes people reshare jobs, and it's much easier to apply to those jobs or sort of get referrals for those jobs when this person has been in your network for some time, also knows you from your LinkedIn, or knows your work from LinkedIn, or knows you through a common colleague, because that just builds some amount of trust.
Yes.
And it's much easier to even have that conversation or sort of message them, and increases the likelihood of them replying to you. So yeah, I think I haven't had much success with cold emailing necessarily. However, something that I was pleasantly surprised by was not individuals, but going to companies' websites that you were actually passionate about, finding their careers website, because usually companies that do have sort of specific email IDs dedicated to recruitment, or they're very forthcoming and they're actually looking for new talent. So they will really appreciate if you show your interest, even if there isn't an opportunity that's open at the moment. They will think of you. They will come back to you. I had a job which I applied for, and I had really high hopes for I interviewed for that job. I gave 2 rounds of interview, and I was almost sure I would get the job. I did not. And I was quite heartbroken at that time. But a week later, and so I just replied. So when I got the sort of rejection email, I replied to it saying, I just had a great time interviewing. I'm really passionate about the company, and if something comes up in the future, I would love to be informed about that.
Mhm.
And just a week later, they informed me that another position had opened, which wasn't the same, but it was quite similar. I interviewed for that and got a job offer for that.
Amazing.
And that, I think that never would have happened if I hadn't sort of shown them how interested I was, even after I was sort of
Yeah.
unsuccessful in the application.
I think it's a great lesson. Like, you always want to end it on a good note and always leave a good impression. Not only when you first speak to them, but also the last time you speak to them, which is kind of to wrap up thanks for the interview, thanks for the opportunity. I would love to be considered for future positions if they arise. Maybe can I get some feedback as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I guess if you had to give some really quick advice to anyone who's going through this similar journey right now, it could be like a mental thing or a practical tip. What's your top tip?
I think my top tip is more sort of, again, mindset focused than it is practical, because there's a lot of practical tips out there, most of which work if you try for long enough.
Mhm.
Um, I think one thing that's very important is to not let doubt get the better of you, and also not let yourself be pulled down by someone else's journey,
Yes.
because um, it's so unique for all of us, and you never know what might just work out for you. The job that I've been sponsored in, it was advertised as a graduate level job at a much lower salary, and of course without sponsorship, because it was a writing job. One thing led to another. We had conversations. The hiring manager took a liking to me, and if I told myself that this is already a job that's paying lower than what I'm expecting, it already
Mhm.
doesn't come with sponsorship, I probably never would have interviewed with them.
Yeah.
Uh, and sort of having that self belief, not just in like, n- not just in an abstract way, but in your abilities and your skill, because I don't think it's a small thing to have moved countries at such
Yeah.
young ages. I think it really shows the sort of resilience and the mental strength that immigrants bring with them. Just holding on to that for a couple more months or a couple more years till things actually work out. I think just sort of discarding doubt as soon as it comes in and
Mhm.
prodding on what your goal is. I think that's my only advice, or my top advice.
I would agree that's probably the most important thing, because you can have all the different strategies and all the different ways of trying things, but if you don't stick with it and you don't kind of be resilient through the whole thing, you're going to give up. You're going to doubt yourself, and that's just, yeah, it's not going to be helpful for anyone.
Yeah.
And I think you're right that we
Because
create.
I think it also impacts the way in which you show up. If there is some amount of lingering self doubt, or you've just read a news which has suddenly told you it's just not going to happen, it's unimaginable.
Yeah.
The sort of application you're going to make is not going to be your best, because internally it's not something you believe in.
Yeah.
And that's just it's just a very scientific way of actually thinking about it, because that's just how you show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes the data is just the data, but everyone's journey is personal. Like, you might be the one who gets a job tomorrow, and that's not up to the statistics, right? That's up to how you kind of frame your narrative, how you go out there, how you create your own luck. That is such a valuable thing, and this has been such a good conversation. There's so many things in here I want to like cut up, and with your permission, of course, we can decide how to share that. I guess to end off, what are you excited about in terms of your career, and what's like the next thing you're looking forward to?
So, I am currently on my notice period in my company. I'm moving on to a new job, the one that I've been sponsored in. And the role is something that, hand to my heart, I did not even know, I didn't even think it would exist. I've always wanted to write creatively, but I didn't think there were any creative writing jobs in the corporate world, let alone sponsored jobs. So, the job that I'm going to be starting is a creative proposal writer. And I'm really, really excited to start, because um, the sort of, yeah, without saying too much, the sort of companies that I'm going to be writing for, the sort of clients that I'm going to be working with are names that I've actually heard. And that just makes all the difference, because there's instantly that sort of relatability. And also, I'm excited to see what this sort of a job could be like, because I've always dreamt of something like this, but never actually thought it existed.
Yeah.
So to actually be able to do this is without, yeah, I don't want to say too much, but genuinely a dream come true for me.
Wow. I mean, you've gone from one success to like the next thing, which is even better than what you've had. So that's super
And
impressive.
something that I could have even thought of, I wouldn't even have thought of this existing.
Yeah. I'm quite envious of this career. It sounds like you're gonna get you're gonna be doing what you love for a living, but so you're gonna write creatively, which people normally associate with being like a freelance writer or writing your own novel or work without any funding or backing. But it sounds like you're going to be able to do this in a kind of career way, in a career path which allows you to write for companies, but still get to exercise like your creative
Yes.
skill set. Wow, that is an inspiration, and you managed to do it with sponsorship as well.
Yeah, a lot of the things worked out in my favor as well. I have to give it to that, but I think they worked out for me eventually because I kept going as well. So it's a bit of both.